Hi, I'm Sally. Let's book a flight. So my go-to is Google Flights. It has a lot of really great features that not all of the platforms have. So first, it has this amazing explore function. So if you know the dates or range of dates you're leaving, you can check which airport within a region or along your itinerary has the best price. You can filter out the ones that don't have luggage or have bad layovers or are too long. Note that some of the locations suggested by the explore function aren't actually airports. So focus on the cities with airports only. An alternative way to check prices at multiple airports is to go to the regular flight search page and insert the airport codes separated by a comma. The other function that's great to have if you have a bit of flexibility in your timing is the date grid. So to find this, use the regular search page, search a flight, and then scroll down past the first few flights. Unfortunately, this does not work if you're looking for an open jaw flight, but you can use it as a way to get a sense of what will be the cheapest by looking up one-way flights and then putting them together. You might want to try using the tracking function. You can use this for certain dates, destinations, specific flights. Make sure you turn it off once you've settled on a specific flight because you don't want to get buyer's remorse when you find out it drops a whole bunch afterwards. So try using the filters. Be realistic about how many hours you want to spend traveling. The other one I use a lot is this departure and arrival time. I don't like arriving somewhere late at night, so I often just filter out those flights. I like to take public transit to the airport, so again, I filter out the ones that leave too early because that would add the cost of a taxi. If you want to stay at an airport hotel, then that will simplify your arrival and departure time, but factor in those costs when you're comparing prices of flights. So check to see if luggage is included, and if it isn't, then it's going to be confusing to try to figure out how much that costs often. It is often a significant cost, so take these prices on these discount airlines with a grain of salt, of course. So before you buy a flight, make sure it's to the right airport. Sometimes Google suggests a flight to or from a nearby airport. You can avoid this if you enter the airport code into the search bar instead of the name of the city. Some things I avoid when I'm looking for a flight: short layovers. Anything less than an hour is probably too risky for me. It can take 20 minutes to get off a flight, and the gate to your next flight will close quite a while before the actual departure time. So I try to avoid that stressful situation. I avoid layovers that require you to transfer between airports, for example, Heathrow and Gatwick. This is a pretty big headache. It can go wrong. The buses, say from Heathrow to Gatwick, can be significantly delayed. That has happened to me. There can be a lot of traffic, construction. I avoid buying connecting flights that require separate tickets because the first flight can be delayed and there's no compensation if you miss the second flight because of that if you buy them on separate tickets. Whereas if you buy them on a single ticket, the airline needs to sort that out. So the exception would be if you're planning on spending a few days on an extended layover somewhere. Often that can save you some money and you get to visit maybe a different country as well. Consider if you're really willing to do an overnight layover, and if so, whether you'd consider sleeping in the airport to keep your costs down. So some airports do have fairly good sleeping areas, and there is a website called Sleeping in Airports that you can check to decide. Make sure that if you plan a long or overnight layover and plan to leave the airport, that you won't need a visa for the country that you're doing that layover in. And speaking of long layovers, it may seem like a great way to hit another city on your trip by doing, say, a 12-hour layover, but don't forget that most airports are outside of the city center. You're going to have to go through possibly immigration, then take a train or whatever, and then do that all in reverse, go through security. This might only actually leave you a few hours to actually enjoy the city, and it's going to cost a lot in terms of getting to and from the city. It might also just be stressful, tiring. You might be jet lagged. You might have traveled for many hours. you're maybe not actually going to enjoy yourself that much. So I sort of recommend against that. Personally, I try to commit a couple of hours when I know I have the time to finding the best flight and to just buying one then and there so that I don't have to repeat the exercise over and over. Historically, I have found that all of the different platforms like FlightHub, Kayak, Expedia, Google Flights all have the exact same prices and flights. However, in recent months, I've noticed that that's not true. I don't know if that's changing or it's the regions I've been looking at, but there were much cheaper flights for some of my itineraries on FlightHub than on Google Flights. So I would consider, once you have a good look at Google Flights, just check a couple other platforms and see how it compares. It's usually a lot better to buy your tickets directly from the airline rather than through a third party like FlightHub. But if there is a really good deal, then that's maybe something you want to think about. A tip for potentially saving some money is to know that there are certain countries that require you to be able to cancel a flight within 24 hours for a full refund, regardless of what class it is. And so if you buy a flight directly from an airline, this does not necessarily work through third parties, so don't rely on that. But if you buy it right from the airline and it's one of those flights that you're entitled to a 24-hour refund, then check that flight again the next day. And if it's dropped in price, you can cancel your original ticket and rebuy it at the discount. So that applies to flights coming and going from Canada or the US. There's also a whole bunch of different airlines that just offer that on all of their flights. If you're planning on renting a car, look up the car rental rates for each of the airports on your radar. You might find this is the deciding factor in choosing between different cities or airports. Even if the flights are more expensive, the car rental might offset that.